about the COVID-19 impacts.
Great. So first of all, thanks to everyone for attending and making time for this today. I know everyone's very busy, and so I really appreciate taking the time to listen in. And thank you also to Matt and Frank for putting this together. It takes a lot to get so many people to get together to work on a presentation, decide what's the most important stuff to talk about, and put the content together. So thank you for your hard work on this as well. Yeah, this has been, so 2020 has been a challenging year, I think everyone, for a lot of different reasons. And primarily, you know, the coronavirus was not something I don't think anyone had even thought could happen, something like this. And so I think, you know, I'm sure it's the same at the utilities, you know, we've all been we've been learning as we've been flying, we've been sort of, I guess you could say, building the airplane while we're flying and figuring out how to serve customers during this time. And so I just wanted to give a couple updates on that. So we have resumed our field operations largely. So, and we have been working with our implementers on putting some health and safety protocols into place. I can get into a little bit more detail on the next slide, but we are starting to go into the field. And we're monitoring this dynamic situation. I think there is the potential, given what happens and what we're seeing in other states and places that is sort of, we're keeping an eye on it. That could change. Depending on what happens in terms of like the case counts and things like that. So it's a very dynamic situation. We are in the field right now. As you'll recall, on March 24th, we did cease our field operations and moved everything over to virtual. So what that meant is energy advisors were taken out of the field. We had to shut down some of our retail operations, events, trainings, in-home appliance pickups. We had moved those to curbside. Some of these things are a little bit quicker to start back up again, and it really depends too on the situation. So for example, some of our retailers are not allowing these retail events yet. And so it's definitely sort of a patchwork. We also changed everything over to virtual meetings, online trainings. You know, I'd mentioned the curbside appliance pickup. Things that were not really impacted were retail products. The retailers were open, and so people could go and purchase products at retailers. Our pack fulfillment, kit fulfillment programs, those types of services were deemed essential and allowed to remain open. Trade ally services, processing applications, call center, those things were all open and available to customers. So, you know, I just wanted to put that in there because while we're in the field, it is a little bit of a patchwork. It's sort of depending customer to customer. Some customers, for example, don't want non-local staff or staff that's not a part of their organization on site. And so, we're really following the customer's lead. So it's not uniform like that. Some retailers have different rules than others. And so, you know, where we can, we are trying to be in the field as much as possible, recognizing, you know, it's a little bit, there's not a great uniformity throughout the state. Matt, if you could move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. In terms of guidance for field operations, all of our, the focus staff, you know, is expected to abide by the protocols and recommendations of local health officials and local health departments, as well as the CDC. This means things like adhering to social distancing requirements and using PPE. So wearing a mask if you're indoors in a facility and you're meeting with people, and those types of things are required, as is frequent hand washing and sanitizing. We also have questionnaires. So if we are going to go on site, we do ask, and ask employees to monitor their own temperatures, but also, ask some questions at the site, regarding, is anybody there, sick or experiencing symptoms and things like that. So there are some protocols that we've built into our operations. And I want to also add that if any member of the Focus on Energy staff is uncomfortable, if they go on site and they visit a customer and trade ally and they don't feel comfortable or safe with what's happening at that facility, they definitely have the option to leave. I would encourage anyone, if they're feeling uncertain, to leave and to kind of err on the side of being probably a little overly cautious, just given that we don't know a lot right now. I think I had recently read an article that they think that the virus is more aerosolized than I think people realized. And so there's, as we're learning more, I would just prefer that people take a little bit more of a conservative approach in their dealings with the public and in going on to site visits. And so that's what, at a high level, what the guidance is to Focus on Energy employees that are going in. Now, we also have a lot of trade allies, and those are not Focus on Energy employees that are in the staff or that are in their field that work with Focus and work with customers, but they're not exactly Focus on Energy employees, and they have to abide by their own, employers' requirements. So a couple examples of where we are seeing some impact in terms of participation. That'll be the next slide. Largely, we are not seeing huge amounts of cancellations of projects. And we do remain on track right now to reach our year-end goals, so our 2020 goals. And just to put that in perspective, there's a long lead time and a pretty substantial pipeline of projects that exists, especially on the business side at any given time. We see, and so that is still kind of working its way through. And so if a project had gotten so far that the customer has pre-approval and they have a letter saying that there's some incentive dollars committed, we are seeing most of those projects kind of continue. Where I think that maybe we'll see impact in the future is that when our implementers are sort of talking with customers about projects that haven't quite gotten to that stage, they haven't quite committed, so they haven't either done a purchase order for the equipment. There's a little bit of softness there in those conversations, but those projects wouldn't be in our pipeline, but it's kind of an early indicator that maybe in the future there could potentially be some softness in the pipeline. But we are largely on track right now as we stand right now. In new construction on the residential side, permits for new homes are down about 25%. And overall architecture billing rates or billings are at the lowest, this is the biggest drop that they've seen in that industry in decades. So I do think, longer term, we're going to see softness in new construction. We're also seeing some softness in residential building shell measures. So these would be your air sealing and insulation. What we are seeing, a lot of people, are still continuing to move ahead with HVAC projects, but those projects tend to be replace on fail. So that tends to be a situation where a customer is sort of in an urgent need of probably an air conditioner now or a furnace in the winter. So that's still happening, but building shell measures, there is some softness there. In terms of segment specific, healthcare is having some challenges there. Obviously, we don't have access to those sites right now, and because because some of them are having to put off non-essential operations and surgeries and things like, there's a little bit of uncertainty in the financial side there as well. And bright spots, actually, higher education. We have seen projects that were scheduled for the summer, they got brought forward a little bit sooner. And there had been a number of school referendums that passed. And so those projects are still going. Packs and kits and the online marketplace, things that people can do from home. We're still seeing a lot of activity, and in fact, higher activity than I think we would have expected in those channels. One thing that we're keeping an eye on, and we're not sure what exactly the opportunity is, but we are doing a lot of research regarding ventilation technologies, because there's starting to be some more guidance on increasing air changeovers and things in facilities, and that can have a pretty substantial impact on energy usage. And so we are we are looking at that as something that we could look at in the future. Next slide. So what does this all mean in the longer term? So right now there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the market. There's a lot of economic uncertainty. So we could potentially, I think, see reductions in demand. One area is commercial real estate. We have received anecdotal reports and have talked with companies that are deciding that, you know what, this work from home thing is working out okay for us. Maybe we don't need to rent an office space, or maybe we're going to reduce our footprint and those types of things. So commercial real estate, I think, is something that we really need to keep an eye on. We could be seeing, I would imagine, higher vacancy rates and things like that. So that's a big one. Another one, I put in here, restaurants, taverns, and hospitality. All of those businesses are impacted by these shutdowns. A lot of them are still operating carry out only. And so this is going to have a lot of impact. These are a lot of smaller businesses. A lot of them don't have, lots of funds that they can just, live with this for a while. So I am concerned about that as well. And healthcare, that continues to be, a big question mark as well. Again, getting access to the facilities, that's challenging with good reason. But then also, what does this mean in terms of their financial picture if they're having to, cancel non-essential healthcare procedures and things like that? That really does interfere with their financials too. And then there's some concerns about the financial sector in general. Will businesses have access to capital to undertake these improvements going into the future? And I think that's why, when we're talking with customers about projects, they're that kind of pipeline, I think there could be some softness there because they're just not sure, what the financing is going to look like, and will they have access to that capital to make those improvements? The other thing that I think keeping an eye on is the utility sector. Obviously, so program funding is largely tied to utility revenue. It's 1.2% of revenue. And, we've seen really interesting statistics about how the COVID situation is impacting usage and demand from customers with, lower demand from businesses, more demand on the residential side. All of this kind of contributes to that revenue. And we're tied to that as well. So I'm sure the utilities are concerned about that as well. And that would have impacts in the overall focus on energy budget out into the future as well. So a lot of things out there that we need to be keeping an eye on. And so that's just a sampling of the things that we're thinking about. I wanted to go back and revisit evaluation results. So the 2019 evaluation just completed, and I wanted to bring out a couple interesting findings from that evaluation report. The first one here is cost effectiveness. And so there's a chart up here shows the 2018 cost effectiveness versus the 2019 cost effectiveness. So 2018, the overall TRC was 3.66, and in 2019, it's 2.58. And the reason for this really doesn't have anything to do with the programs. It has to do with input assumptions that are made when the total resource cost test is run. And so this is sort of analogous to like the cost of gasoline and how does it make economic sense to buy a Prius or a Cadillac Escalade. And so when one of the key inputs is the avoided cost of energy, and so when this test is run, they're looking at they're making a projection of how much do we think energy is going to cost in the future. And then they run the TRC calculation based on those assumptions. And then they revisit those assumptions and update them. So that's actually what happened here in 2018 from moving from 2018 to 2019 is there was a major revision in the avoided cost. It went down by about 30% roughly. And you can see that impact here in terms of, the this really doesn't have anything to do with program operations. It's just a function of, changing the input variables in the formula. 2.8 is actually still very good on the TRC perspective. That's a portfolio level TRC. Couple interesting things here. You can see renewables are now pretty solidly above 1. So that basically means like for every dollar put in from a TRC perspective, there's a dollar of benefit. And so for renewables, that's above 1. And that's what you want to see throughout your portfolio. And 2.58 is pretty good. Non-residential business does tend to be more cost effective because you have fewer large projects as opposed to residential, where you have many more smaller projects, and that weighs into that quite a bit. So that's cost effectiveness. In terms of overall energy savings achievement, we're pretty close to being on track. So the dotted line is the previous quad. This little red dot up here is where we need to be every year. We need to meet about 75 MMBTU, million MMBTU, excuse me. And so, the green line was last year. So we came in a little bit above that red dot. This blue is where we're trending. When you do see those bumps in the line, and the reason it's not like perfectly straight is those tend to be pretty large projects coming through the pipeline. So LEU, industrial customers, things like that will move that line around quite a bit. So, but we're looking to be pretty solidly on track this year as well. So not a lot of concern in terms of goal achievement right now. Customer satisfaction is very high. It remains very high. So we have a metric that we measure against a baseline. A baseline was set in 2015, I believe. That's 8.9 on a 1 to 10 scale. We measure that every year. We measure that quarterly, actually, to track how we're doing. And right now we are at a 9.3. So that's the highest rating we've had since we began the survey process in 2015. So we're really excited about that. There's not a lot more to go higher than that, but I say that every year, and every year we do push it up a little bit more. So if you want to show the next slide, Matt, I think that's got the program by program satisfaction. So the yellow line is our baseline. We have every single program above baseline right now, every single one. And these ones with the boxes around the numbers, those are statistically significant, statistically significantly higher than the baseline. So everyone is doing better than their measured baseline. We also added a question into the customer satisfaction surveys about if participants in the focus program, how does it impact their opinion of their utility? And 75% of the residential participants and 71% of non-residential participants that were surveyed said their opinion had become more favorable. So they are happy to see that their utilities are sponsoring this program in general, and it does tie in with their overall sense of satisfaction with their utility. So that's, I think, great news as well. A few other things that are happening in the evaluation space. So in addition to that standard annual program evaluation, every so often they do this economic impacts report, and that is different in that it throws in all the job impacts. And so based on, like trade allies, and kind of then there's a multiplier effect for keeping money into local economies. And so based on that, the economic impacts report for the Focus Energy program is basically for every dollar spent, you get $5.85 of benefits to the state. And that applying those updated net economic benefits to the 2019 TRC actually raises the expanded TRC, which is another measure that they do, to 4.8, which is great. Couple other things that are happening on the evaluation front as well, and they are the PSC and CADMIS are getting ready, or they're launching a 2021 potential study. This is the first step in the quad planning process, and so they've been having, you may have participated, there's been a series of stakeholder meetings. You can find more information at the website here, but basically this summer, the intention is, and it could be a little weird this year with COVID, but they want to get into the field and start collecting data this summer and have results, draft results the following spring, which will kind of give us a sense of where is the potential. So I would encourage you to participate in that stakeholder meeting because I think it's really important to hear from the utilities as well. And yeah, kind of as I referenced a little earlier. So in terms of field activity for evaluation, they're in the same boat as kind of all of us with some contingency planning for their 2020 verification activities. Usually they go on site and they try to monitor and meter projects or they verify installation. They're delaying that. They're going to probably reduce the number of site visits. They're going to try to do more through remote verification. So that's a challenging situation as well. In addition, they have had to delay this market characterization study for residential new construction. That's a market that we're really trying to understand the baseline. And unfortunately, it does require going into homes and collecting data. And at this point, that's something that they're kind of delaying and trying to figure out what is the best path forward there. So they'll also be incorporating in best practices and experience that they've learned in other jurisdictions. CADMIS does evaluations nationally. So they're seeing this everywhere. It's obviously not isolated to Wisconsin. And that's everything I had. I'm going to turn it over to Nate to kind of talk about 2020 Q1 performance.
Yeah, great. Maybe do a quick audio check. Matt, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks, Nate. Great.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, just a quick update on energy savings achievement. The graph you're seeing here, somewhat replicative to the earlier slide that Aaron showed, but we tend to sort of annualize our MMBTU targets across the course of the 4-year quad. And so what you're seeing here are millions of MMBTU on the y-axis and then the course of the year on the x-axis. The dotted line represents the quad 2 average that we've seen to date. The solid gray line is the 2019 achievement, and then the 2020 darker sort of bold red line is our achievement to date. So I believe this tracks through just Q1 presently, but you are seeing that we are above where we were this time last year as it relates to gross life cycle MMBTU achievement. So that's good news. As Aaron mentioned earlier too, we're still not seeing any major impacts, surrounding COVID or performance or anything that would suggest that we're under target as it relates to forecast and achievement. The target that you see at the top there, I believe, is the 75 million MMBTU, and then our 2020 contract. So that's the total number of energy savings that we have contracted with implementer. So a little bit above that target, and yeah, we are on track at this juncture. Next slide, please. And so this is back to just Q1 results, and CADMIS performs the aggregation of the results from customer satisfaction through surveys, and proud to report that the 8.9 portfolio goal, all the solutions are achieving above and beyond that baseline goal. So many of you know too, as a part of moving into 2020, we did aggregate some of our historical programs into solutions. And so on the bottom there, you're seeing the representation of that. So business and industry as an example, things like large industrial and small business roll up into that category, just as a reference point. But all programs, or solutions are performing above that baseline. I think an indicator too is that anytime you transition into a new structure, a new configuration, there is always a concern on customer satisfaction. But we're glad to report that even with the change, which really was intended to provide solutions in a clearer and cleaner way, for customers, that customer satisfaction hasn't dipped at all. Next slide. Jumping into residential solutions. So quick reminder too, if anyone has any questions in the moment, feel free to push those into that chat feature that Matt alluded to earlier. We'll try to address those in the moment if we can. If not, we'll take those offline. Trade Alley Solutions. So this is your whole home HVAC, also prescriptive HVAC, which includes building shell measures. Most of those HVAC projects were, on a sort of continual path, even through the stay-at-home order. That's mainly due to the fact that HVAC was deemed an essential service. So there still were trade allies that were providing replace on fail, or just, services of upgrades that were on the books. And so I'm glad to report that we did see a continuation or sort of a steady state equilibrium there. There has been a little bit of a reduced participation from a building shell standpoint, but I think we're hopeful that that's going to turn back around here in the next couple months, but we're monitoring that closely. Direct to customer, so retail lighting and appliance recycling, the online marketplace. We've seen, some interesting numbers from online marketplace and kit participation, really very much higher than normal. So those types of numbers have contributed to staying above, our forecast and goal achievement. But we also, in balance, have seen some reductions from retail lighting just based on COVID and some of the inabilities to kind of get into stores with the retail program staff. But I think we knew that was coming. So we've been able to pivot. And then appliance recycling, a slight decrease. I think shifting from in-home pickup to curbside pickup, was a variable, but as Aaron alluded to earlier, we are planning to reintroduce in-home pickup through appliance recycling, as well as having more field staff for Trade Alley Solutions in market, with a fine eye on how the dynamics are changing in Dane County and through the rest of the state. And then lastly, residential new construction. I believe Aaron mentioned this earlier too. There's probably about a 20% reduction in 2020 project volume versus forecast. Some of that is due to just, the market in general, but also some COVID impacts. Next slide. A couple of new offerings and incentives we want to provide some updates on. Pop-up e-tail. So that effectively is the substitute for the private industry pop-up retail that we were providing at large employers or private events historically. So we've moved into that format as a response to COVID. That's been going well. It's still, and I think we're planning to continue that e-tail offering. If we start to see any changes in the market related to COVID, which we have, I think we're going to continue that offering through the remainder of the year. That does offer another channel for customers to access the incentive retail products. Trade Alley Solutions, so multifamily is more into focus here through the Trade Alley Solutions. As a reminder, we've sort of migrated away from the multifamily energy savings program, but the full suite of offerings to multifamily building owner, property manager are available through the Trade Alley Solutions. We are expecting an increase in building shell measures from multifamily this year too. So we think that shift, is going to be a benefit to the market. Related, the larger 4+ unit multifamily customers do have access to those shell measures and in-unit HVAC upgrades. So that effectively is a result of that customer pipeline, moving at a higher level. And then the Trade Alley Solutions Tier 2 or enhanced incentives for income qualified. That verification process was streamlined as a result of COVID impacts, and it really was put in place to include sort of just a direct qualification process allowing a shift to only allow 1 month of income qualification. So trying to respond to some of the challenges that our underrepresented or underserved markets may have. So I think we have seen some impacts there as it relates to that qualification change. Next slide. And then metrically, so overall performance, I think this is consistent with the messaging so far that we provided on achievement. The gray line there was the forecast. And then the blue line is the overall achievement to date. This number is through Q2. And so, glad to report that, our forecast, I think through June was just over, just above 6 million MMBTU. And I think we're tracking, right around 7.5 million MMBTU right now as it relates to overall achievement. So some really good news on the residential side. And this is just a further breakdown of the two main solutions on the residential side, Trade Ally solution and direct to customer solution. So again, showing high achievement as relative to forecast. Business solutions. So right now we are showing about a 44% achievement to overall MMBTU goal. So not quite, right at that 50% marker that we'd like to be at, but forecasts suggest that we are still going to hit goal. The good news here too is the other metric, the incentive spend or incentive budget spent to MMBTU goal. So they are running hand in hand or in line with spend to goal achievement. So some good news there as it relates to how dollars are being spent in the market to business customers. The graphs here you're seeing are a representation of the savings that we see on an per application basis, and then also the incentive that we pay out per application. And what you're seeing there in blue are the 2019 numbers, and then in gray you're seeing the 2020 numbers. So the savings per application and incentive per application effectively is similar or higher compared to the same time period in 2019, with the exception of in the industrial customer segment, which is a little bit lower on both. So while we have seen a variation in unique customer participation, we are seeing some metrics that suggest that the program is continuing to find opportunities for customers to participate and at a level that is evolving the portfolio. So greater savings are being achieved on a per customer basis or per application basis. And we're using our dollars, and dollars are being spent effectively, to customers as well. So some good health indicator metrics there. And similar to the residential portfolio, this is showing a contracted goal for the business portfolio. So the darker line, the horizontal line at the top there, just over 50 million MMBTU were contracted savings at the beginning of the year. The gray line is the forecast, and then through June, representative of that 44% achievement to overall goal you're seeing. So a little bit of a variation there. We're seeing that variation continue through the year as it relates to forecast. Some small COVID-related impacts, some other impacts related to just how projects are being approved internally for customers, and some of that pushing into 2021, some business decisions being made. But overall, we're still on track to hit that contracted goal. So good news there as it relates to dollars and savings. A couple updates from a measure-specific standpoint. We try to just break out popular measures here and where we've seen some increased participation on a measure-by-measure basis within the core segments. So commercial, industrial, the schools and government, multifamily, and ag. Obviously, LEDs are still high participatory measures across all segments. We are seeing some increased participation in boilers for both the commercial multifamily segment as well as schools and government. On the industrial side, the process type measures continue to be king. So your heat recovery type projects or more complicated custom projects. And then for ag, some more specific, use type, VFD type projects, vacuum pumps, irrigation milk pumps as well, and then ventilation fans. So some variation of measures. Those are for ag. Those measures have become more into focus this year. There has been more outreach and marketing specific to subsegments within ag that is paying dividends as well. New and updated offerings on the on the business side. For small business, many of you know we did create a small business online assessment tool, and we're scoping for that at the beginning of the year. I think it didn't come online until a month or two ago, so a little bit of a lag in terms of when that's available, but it's really going to provide, I think, a great opportunity for small business customers to self-serve. And also gain access to a free energy savings pack. That online assessment does effectively qualify sort of our traditional small business customer as a small business. And then the results of that assessment are an action plan that provides some savings opportunities for their business to act on. And so we are, I think, currently and want to partner more with utilities to help promote that offering, to help with that small business customer, especially where we are with COVID too. So a great opportunity to direct customers towards. The dairy refrigeration tune-up and then the horticultural lighting offering, those are new as of this year. And then some revamp to the comprehensive lighting solution opportunity that was in market last year as well. Things that aren't changing, custom incentive rates aren't changing. There was an original plan to modify those July 1, so mid-year here, but those are no longer changing in 2020. Some of that's based on market feedback. Some of that's based on budget availability. So we also know that some of the decision making and longer lead times that are needed for business customers can be impactful if you're changing those rates. So we've decided not to change those rates. And then retro commissioning, we did have a plan to launch a new retro commissioning offering July 1, and we're going to wait until January 1 of next year to make those changes.
Nate, this is Frank. We've got a question on the online assessment. Someone's wanted to know what the participation level is so far on the small business assessment.
Yeah, I don't know if I have those numbers readily available. I'm not sure. Is Erin Soman on the webinar here? She might be able to provide that metric.
I am, Nate, and I am pulling that number up right now, so I'll respond via chat as soon as I have it available.
Great, outstanding. And then lastly here, this is a new opportunity that we're excited about, the kind of tagging it a rural industrial facility operations review, tracking to have that in market in August. So the goal here is to provide a more collaborative approach to identifying savings opportunities at rural industrial facilities, in more of a treasure hunt or an energy scan that would provide some depth as it relates to looking at where a lot of the energy intensive processes are occurring at these types of facilities. So the goal is to provide some different paths of participation, an engagement type incentive, and that would require folks to participate in sort of a series of meetings, some energy rewards, so custom prescriptive incentives for actually implementing opportunities that were identified, some added incentives there, and then also some training rewards too, where some dollars would be shared or provided to support reimbursement for training activities for attending EE type training. So we're expecting that opportunity again or enrollment to happen in August. So something to look forward to there. And then just yeah.
We did have another question come in.
Yeah.
What's the forecast for PV incentives for the rest of the year, including rural incentive?
Yeah, great question. So we've got a subset of slides coming on renewables. So I will get to that here shortly. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
And then a couple other items here. So school benchmarking initiative. This is something that kicked off last year, and there's been a lot of interest in the continuation of that. And that I think is being converted to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So a little bit outside of the program, but still some support from the program as it relates to training to support schools and benchmarking. The rural industrial staffing incentive, there still are a few dollars that are available to support that in customer enrollment as of this webinar. And in schools and government, there's a practical energy management offering. And so that ties into school and government facility managers, looking at like a late July, early August opportunity there. And then we just wanted to mention propane briefly too. That's in partnership with the Office of Energy Innovation, the PSC. So they did receive an extension from the DOE to continue that funding. And that will be available through July of 2022. Midstream. So new offering this year, it's a distributor-based channel that's available in the market now. We've had quite a bit of success with distributor enrollment. And then the product categories that are available through Midstream, you see there commercial kitchen equipment, ductless mini split heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, and then high performance circulator pumps. So that's the initial category of equipment that's available. And next slide, Matt. We also do have some information on the website. There's a fact sheet that's available for Midstream for folks that want some more details. Matt and Frank can be engaged directly too. But I also wanted to show the spread of distributor participation so far throughout the state. And so it is showing a pretty good share, obviously your metro areas of Milwaukee, Madison, but north, northwest. So some good representation in terms of distributor interest. And then we have seen a little bit of a dip in forecasted participation, but some of that as it relates to reporting is sort of it's basically impacted by when data is uploaded into the system. So I think we're tracking closer to that forecast than that sort of MMBT actual suggests. Next slide. I know I'm tight on time here and want to leave some time for Matt and Frank, but I know there are some questions and interest in renewables. We have seen a record year specific to renewable rewards participation, specific to solar PV. Some of that is related to the federal investment tax credit. We also have seen some new trade allies that have effectively become the top producers in the state for the program. These are trade allies that have had success in other markets in other states and are benefiting from both the tax credit and then also the incentive that's available. COVID-19 has not really impacted the residential demand for PV. So we are seeing some signs of slowing down on the business side. Some of that I think is based on just operations and operations shutdown, but that residential demand continues at a high level. The next two slides are graphical representation of where that participation is. So the color coding there you're seeing from 2016, and then the 4- and 5-fold growth in 2020, and this is a representation of application counts by month. And as mentioned, about a third of the applications year to date have been from a new trade ally. Next slide. The program did expect an increase in RES projects this year, but that demand has definitely outpaced expectations. So the last two vertical bar charts there, that was the forecast. And then about 1,700 is what we're seeing as of this past week, or what's forecast, and that's correlated to budget availability too. So I think that tracks into the question, but we'll get to that after a quick overview of the incentive tables presently. Next slide, Matt. So because of the demand in res PV, we did opt to reduce incentive levels in June. So we made some changes to the incentive level at the beginning of the year, but based on this demand, we have had to reduce the maximum incentive for residential incentive from 1,500 down to 1,000. We did also downturn the business incentives, but not at the level that we had to for residential rewards. So, again, the demand and the budget availability being some variables and restrictors in terms of, needing to get to this point to continue to serve the market. But we are, next slide, please. We are at, sort of a breaking point as it relates to the budget availability and the demand. So here you are seeing that budget that was allocated for residential renewable rewards. And this is also what's been paid and reserved so far and what's remaining. So very little left on the table for the remainder of the year, just over 200,000. I think that number is changing daily. Next slide, please. And one other nuance specific to how we have the incentives cut up within renewable rewards, we do have incentive allocation per system size. So you're seeing here, the 0 to 100 kW system, the 100 to 300 kW system, and then 300 plus. And so for those larger systems, 300 plus, those dollars have been fully allocated. There is an opportunity, if a project comes in of the 300 plus kW size, to allocate some of the dollars at a lower tier, but also at a lower incentive rate. So we do have that latitude if needed. Next slide. And so, I guess the conclusion here, or the summary of all this, is that we are pretty much having to move into a formal wait list for renewable rewards. The expectation is that based on current application intake, we are expecting that wait list to go into effect at the end of this month or by August 1st. So the chance of a new project coming in and receiving funding in 2020 is very low at this point. It's likely that about 50 projects may end up going from waitlist to approval once we have that waitlist in action. But we do have a plan to message to customers and then make sure that the website language reflects this. There'll be an email that travels to participating renewable installers. And then I believe Matt and Frank are planning a utility newsletter that will provide more details as it relates to that waitlist process. As of January 1, 2021, as the waitlist sort of process plays out, we will be reaching out to those folks to give them the option to reserve funds at a determined number of months out from that point. So that is sort of a new threshold we're crossing here in terms of having to really have a hard waitlist system in place for renewable rewards. And then training, quick updates. We did successfully enter into a new partnership with the Midwest Energy Renewable Association, hosting some PV classes, and it was a scholarship class. We also did receive some confirmation from the Wisconsin DSPS on accredited CEUs for the advanced network lighting controls, and 9 licenses qualifying there. And we're continuing with the selling in 6 opportunity with trade allies based on the success of last year. Next slide. The COVID response, just like some of the other changes, the format for training, a lot of it has moved online. So online for network lighting controls. We are expanding those selling in 6 licenses to include energy advisor staff to help with sales and training and support for customers. And then we also will have a compressed air course moved online, as well as the BOC opportunities, the building operator certification courses moving online as well. And then the last slide here, just to wrap up the portfolio section. This is the schedule for the remainder of the year. So you see in August and then in September, online opportunities for participation. We do have some trainings on the books, September, October, November, at facilities and customer sites locations, but we're monitoring that may have to change or evolve to online or another contingency there. So some good opportunities from energy management to specifics on motors and fans, as well as HVAC and PV between now and the end of the year.
Great. Well, thank you, Nate, for that update. I will just cover a few things on the marketing side. First, as many of you know, every year Focus on Energy recognizes the outstanding achievements from some of our participants in the program and provide excellence in energy efficiency awards. This year we have selected 13 businesses and individuals to receive the award. We made the announcement on Earth Day back in April. And usually what we like to do is present these awards in person at the customer site, invite the local utility representatives, elected officials, staff, or commissioners from the Public Service Commission or other state agencies. But we'll have to do things a little bit different this year because of the COVID situation. And our plan is to give the customer the option of having a virtual presentation in which we would, invite the same stakeholders and to, provide a presentation online, like through Microsoft Teams in that case. So once we reach out to these customers, which we're starting to do now, because we just got the awards finished up. And we are going to reach out and provide those options to these customers. And then if they would like a online presentation, we'll make sure the utility representatives are notified of that. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is, in response to the COVID, we've moved some of our content to a more digital avenue. One of the things that we've done is provide and been hosting these Facebook Live segments. We've noticed that there's been, with many of us working from home now, there's an opportunity to reach these people, our customers, important information about the program or energy saving tips. And so on Fridays at 10 o'clock, we've been hosting these Focus Friday 5s on different subject areas, including smart thermostats, advanced power strips, savings tips, what you can do in your house or outside of your house. So we appreciate, our utility partners sharing this post with their customers through your Facebook. And stay tuned, we'll be having some more of those coming up in the next few weeks. I want to turn it over now to Frank, who will share some information about a SharePoint site that we have under development and some additional marketing resources we have available.
Yeah, so this is something we've been wanting to do for quite a while, and we really struggled with finding the platform that would really suit our needs for this. And so we finally have this SharePoint site that we think is going to work. And the idea here is that this is going to be a one-stop shop for all the resources that we're currently providing to you. So right now you have to remember where you have that link for the Collateral site and for the reports and all these things. You have to remember where the cheese is hidden. And so we want to take all the cheese and we want to put it right here on this we'll call it a utility portal for you to find whenever you need. So all you have to do is remember where the link is to the portal. So again, things we'll have on here will be like the links to the utility reports, both QuickSight, Newsstand, links to the Collateral store, latest news and updates, including archives to the monthly utility newsletter and other resources that we think would be valuable to you. And another thing, we just haven't found a consistent way to securely share files, and so we have a way we can do that as well. Next slide. So this is just a quick, this doesn't really do it justice, but a quick idea of what this page is going to look like. There's a lot of graphics, and so, but you'll have links to the Collateral store and the QuickSight dashboard, newsstand reports, and then next slide. And then you'll see links to other things, evaluation reports, training, whatever it is, we think you might need to see. You'll see the latest, our latest Facebook posts, and we want you to remember that we created this for you. So if you have ideas about what you would like to see on this site, please let Matt or me know, and we'll do our best to have that available on the site. So, and this is an idea of what the secure file sharing would be. It's pretty simple. So, and it is secure instead of the current way we do it, which is I think we password protect the sheets. All right, we've got some new online marketplace collateral. Some of you have seen this before. I know I've sent out emails and things letting you know that this is available. I just want to go through this again. So we have some third-page fill insert pieces that promote the energy saving packs and smart thermostats, along with the online marketplace, because they all kind of go hand in hand. I also have a new postcard that promotes the recently launched online small business assessment tool. And just reminding you that, again, for a limited time, small businesses that complete the assessment can order a free small business energy saving pack that is suited to their business. And this is just an example of those new pieces. The one in the upper left-hand corner just basically shows the customer the three different ways that they can find discounted LEDs. So through the kits, through the marketplace, and then through participating retailers. And then the one below that, basically it promotes both the kits and also the online marketplace. And we're going to move this design to be also the tear pad, to replace the old tear pad design. And then, of course, we've got an insert for smart thermostats, and again, that would lead the customer to all the different ways that they can get a discount on smart thermostats through the program. And then we have the small business postcard for the small business assessment tool. And again, these are all co-brandable, and they are available on the Collateral store.
Great, thank you, Frank. All right, I'll wrap things up here. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. And just to review some of the pilots and research and development initiatives that we're undertaking. First, an update on the rural residential behavioral pilot. As some of you probably know, we've launched the pilot earlier this year. We put out a request for applications for communities, rural communities that would have an interest in participating in this behavioral pilot. Those applications are due today. I think we have a few in. I believe some communities have expressed interest and will be granted an extension to get their applications in. But as soon as we review those applications, Frank and I will reach out to the utilities that serve those communities to inform you that there's interest by one of your communities in participating in this and engage you in your particular role potential in this residential behavioral pilot. The other thing I wanted to share with you is we also provided awards to some vendors on research as part of our ERD program. We have awarded a CEE out of Minnesota with 2 research projects, a best practices report concerning air source heat pumps in multifamily and single family buildings. They're also going to look into the energy saving potential for dehumidifiers in Wisconsin. We also provided funding to Illume to prepare a report on load shaping opportunities in Wisconsin, and an award to Slipstream to study cold climate variable refrigerant flow systems, and also as a kind of follow up on the Illume project to provide some research on advanced energy information systems and demand management capabilities in the C&I space. So we look forward to working with these entities and getting some important information that will help us shape the program going forward. And we certainly can share this information with our utility partners. So please let us know if you're interested in some of this research that we're undergoing, and we can keep you posted. So with that, that concludes the update webinar. I'm not sure if we have any questions. I can't see the chat feature. So either Lisa or Frank, do we have any questions?
There's no new questions.
Okay. Well, thank you. We've, I believe we recorded this presentation, but we will post a recording and the slides on our website. We'll provide a link to that in our utility newsletter this month, but you can always go to the About page of our website and go to Utility Resources, and you will find the link to this presentation. So again, thank you for joining, and thank you to Aaron, Nate, and Frank for contributing to this webinar, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.